Welcome to State of Wellbeing, a podcast from South Dakota State University. The State of Wellbeing is a holistic well-being podcast with the goal of supporting the campus community as we strive to be a growing, high-performing, and healthy university.
Welcome back to another episode of the State of Wellbeing podcast. My name is Kevin Sackreiter. I am the Executive Director for the Center for Professional Enrichment and Teaching Excellence here at South Dakota State University and your host for today's episode of our podcast. And so I'm really excited to have this conversation and because I think there's a lot of really good educational opportunities and to learn about the services a little bit of the SDSU Testing Center. And so with us today, we have Janell Davis, who is the Coordinator of Testing Services, and Val Smith, who is the Testing Center Operations Manager. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm excited to have this conversation. And so I gave your names and your titles, but maybe if you want to just introduce yourself to our audience, who you are, what you do here at SDSU, anything else you are interested in sharing. So maybe, Janell, I said your name first, so why don't we start with you, and then we'll just jump over to you, Val.
Okay. I am Janell Davis, Coordinator of Testing Services at the Testing Center. I'm an alum of SDSU and got a bachelor's and a master's here, and have two kids who are almost done with their programs here as well. Met my husband here.
SDSU ties run.
We do. We are blue and gold. My primary focus at the Testing Center is working with proctored testing, accommodated testing. I work a lot with policy and making sure that when we're doing different exams or placement, we are following all the BOR and SDSU policies in relation to all of that. So those are some of my primary responsibilities. I also, whether good or bad, am responsible for Register Blast, which our students and faculty probably know about. So that may be one of the bigger things that I deal with as well.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
How about you, Val?
I'm Val Smith, and I have been at the Testing Center since 2017, and so it's been fun to kind of walk through all the different processes that happen there. But currently what I'm doing is a little bit of everything. So that includes anything from technology to our technology processes. I deal with our professional and third-party vendors. So students coming in who need certification for things, or members of the community far and wide that come for different things like that. Our testing center operations and some transcript evaluations, things like that.
Sure. That operations manager title kind of is a potpourri of opportunity, right? So why don't we just jump right in and talk a little bit about our testing center? Our audience primarily is our student population here at SDSU. And so talk a little bit about the role of the testing center in supporting students here at SDSU, what the testing center does, kind of who you support, students obviously, but what specific services you're really most proud to share with our audience today. I don't know who wants to jump in first with that one, but just kind of the overview of the testing center.
I can give a broad overview, and if I miss anything, maybe Janell can jump in too. So we just kind of keep the testing center functions moving. A lot of technology, a lot of scheduling, just a lot of support for our students. We have students who test with ADA accommodations. We proctor for online exams, again, third-party vendors, so lots of things like that. We support our students, our staff, and our faculty, as well as our community with those professional and vendor exams. I would say I personally am most proud of the relationships that we build. It is our privilege to get to meet and cultivate and build and sustain and encourage all of those. And we are in a unique position where if we have students that start off as freshmen with us and carry through to graduation and beyond, we've gotten to spend a lot of time with them, and they'll sometimes just kind of let us into their world a little bit more, things that are going on. So it's fun to be able to follow up with them. And yes, it really is a delight. So
I love that. So if I'm a freshman or any student at SDSU, let's just say, who's never utilized the testing center, and maybe I need to do one of those third-party exams, or maybe I just have an exam that I need to come over and take, what does that look like? From I walk in the door to I leave and I've got the test completed. started?
Sure. So it varies depending on the test. With our third-party vendors, a lot of them, the registration goes through the vendor itself. They don't directly register with us. For a student who tests with those ADA accommodations, they would have to start that process with the Office of Disability Services. So once that documentation and everything is approved, we are included on any accommodation memos that go to the faculty if the testing center is part of their accommodation. So then we follow up with them as well as the faculty to make sure the faculty submits all of their exams through Register Blast, and then that's how the students would register for their exams. It's kind of a handy little program. It ties everything together, and it seems like it works pretty well for the most part. Once they come in, anyone who tests at the testing center gets to go through a little bit of what we like to call head, shoulders, knees, and toes, because with a lot of our third-party vendors, there are many requirements as far as they can't have certain things, they have to power off devices, and so there's just it's all part of just what we have to do, and we always try to just reassure students that this is all normal and everything gets tucked away. We want anyone who tests with us to get all the credit for all of the work that they are going to do. So whether that's a high-stakes professional certification or a high-stakes final for a student, it's just kind of a process that we go through. We get them testing, and then when they're done, we just get them checked back out, and they're on their way. Like Val said, some we get a little bit more of a relationship with. Others are just sort of in and out. It kind of depends on the student as they get to know us. We do get to foster those relationships, and that's very handy. I think sometimes we may become almost a first line of, especially for our accommodated students, if they're going through something, if something has happened in their life, they have become comfortable enough with us and our staff to maybe share those things, and that allows us to give them the tools to advocate for themselves, tell them maybe the questions to ask of a professor or someone that they might not think of on their own. But also, there have been many times when I have given Nancy Hartenhoff-Crooks a call and said, we have a student going through something. I suggested that they reach out to you, but if they don't, here's a little something that's going on in their world. So we always try and get them to advocate for themselves, but we also kind of like to help encourage and just make sure that any partner in student success is aware of what's going on for a student if we can.
Right. No, I really appreciate you taking the time to kind of lay out that process. And I think it leads into our next question about kind of common frustrations. Obviously, we can't get super specific with any of this, but I'm really curious, and you mentioned kind of advocating for yourself and encouraging that, but I'm curious as students engage in testing processes or testing with you all at the testing center, what are some of those common frustrations that maybe they have to learn to either advocate for themselves or reach out to you all to get additional supports?
Probably one of the biggest things that I would see our students maybe struggling with is because students who test with accommodations by and large get extended time, they often will run into maybe a professor doesn't understand that they have a full class schedule that day, and by getting extended time, that pushes into the next class period, and it is the expectation that students are not to have to miss a different class for a test in your class. And so therefore, sometimes navigating that and talking through that with instructors. We also have students who are allowed a reader. And so right now, our system is set up that we do a live reader. It's a proctor in the room with the student. And we only have very specific times in our schedule with our staffing where we can do those. And so again, like they might have to do it on a different day than what the faculty would like them to, but most of the time it's just a conversation and we can get it all worked out. But that's probably one of the frustrations I would say that students
I would
run into
agree.
the most.
The miscommunications or the misunderstandings of intention and just or how the process goes. And so but it is helpful. We find that usually people have ears to hear and are willing to understand. So it's just a matter of getting a chance to understand.
Well, I would assume, incorrectly or not, that idea of misunderstanding maybe leads to frustration probably more than we realize. And I think it's really good for you to have brought up that idea of with extended time. It can't run into that next class period because there is that expectation that you aren't going to be asked to miss another class. And I think that's a really important piece for you all to be sharing, because I think that's one where when we talk about self-advocacy, students may not be aware of that, and faculty as well may not have a understanding of that.
Right.
So I appreciate you kind of sharing that, because I could see that being a common conversation to need to have with faculty. The other thing, and I suppose it's an assumption I bring to the conversation, but I wanted to talk a little bit about it, is the idea of test anxiety, because I'm guessing that's something that you all get to encounter. I think it happens to all of us. As the stakes go up, our anxiety rises, but I think it can be hard for students as they navigate some of the testing. And so as the Wellbeing podcast, what kinds of things does your office do, tips, ideas, strategies to support the well-being of the students that you get the opportunity to work with? And I don't want to pigeonhole our conversation into test anxiety. I'm sure there's other things, but maybe we start there with test anxiety. And how does your office support students in navigating anxiety they might be feeling during the testing process?
Sure. All of our staff I feel like they are very attuned to kind of seeing some of those signs that could be, and just there's not anybody that we know that probably savors the opportunity to take a test. Right. So whether it's just general, I hope this goes okay, to just full out, this very much makes me anxious. We are very purposeful in our calm and our cheer to try to help people feel welcome, first of all. Sometimes it's just in addition to this test, I don't know how this process goes. And so just not knowing what to expect in that manner, helping them kind of allay any of those fears. So we kind of try to create a welcoming atmosphere and letting them know we want the best for them too, and helping them understand that. So do you want to talk, Janell, a little bit about like
our sensory devices? Oh, sure. So we just added, I think it was just this year, we were fortunate to go to NCTA conference, which is it's a testing association. And one of the presentations was about different kinds of sensory devices or fidget devices. And so I brought that up to Dr. Seefeld, and she was like, well, let's give it a try and see if students enjoy that. And so it's part of the questions when they fill out their little registration form on Register Blast. It asks, do you want to use one of the testing center's sensory devices? Oh, sure. So we don't let them bring their own in, but we have 3 different kinds of devices that any student who is taking a course exam. So we can't allow them during third-party vendor exams. But if it's a proctored student for another university or any of our students testing with us, they have the option to use a sensory device if they would like to. And so we have 3 different kinds of things, and it seems to be pretty popular with the students who have selected. We've had kind of, not everyone chooses to use them, but it does seem to just kind of give them something to kind of work through any of that little bit of anxiousness as they're getting ready to take their test. Some will take it and set it on the desk, and they never even touch it, but just having it there is calming for them. Right. But yeah, I think what Val said is very true. We all just sort of, we're there, we're welcoming them. We try to sort of explain the testing center to them. If it is their first time, it's like, here's what's going to happen. We try to do all of that to just set that tone of, it's okay here, you're going to be okay, and and we'll do what we can to support you and to cheer you on. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you really emphasize the culture within the building and making it a welcoming and supportive place. And I love the external pieces, the sensory items. I think that's really cool. And I wasn't aware of that. So I really appreciate you sharing that. Have they?
Yeah, especially the one that's a little mesh guy that's got a marble in it, and it just rolls back and forth in there in the mesh. Yeah.
What are they?
It's this little mesh like tube that's sewn on the ends of the marble that just goes back and forth.
Oh, okay.
Or there's one that's like a harder plastic, and it's a loop, but they can make different shapes out of it. Mm-hmm. Or we have one that's like this stretchy rubber. It's just a band that's like kind of a noodle. Yeah. And, sometimes you can tell where a student is at with their anxiousness by where that noodle is and everything. I
may have a stretchy noodle in my desk over here. Right?
So it could be a dangerous thing if sitting alone in a testing room. Just got to be a little careful with it.
Yeah. No, I really appreciate you sharing that. And so the other conversation I wanted to have is really more directed probably to faculty who might be listening to this podcast. But I'm curious about how faculty can connect with your work and with the services that you provide. And maybe this is kind of the testing center elevator speech as you talk to faculty, but I'm just curious, how do faculty utilize your center? What do they need to know? And just kind of throw that out there and let you run with it.
I can talk a little bit about some scanning. Sure. We've seen an increase in the use of those bubble sheets, those Scantron forms, and so that's another service that we do. We scan and analyze those and provide the results to the instructors that way. And so any process that has to do with that is all set up for them, and they can get their Scantron sheets from us, the blank ones, and there's a form for them to fill out. If there's questions, it's nice to be able to contact them easily, whether they have questions for us or we have questions regarding how they've set up their key or how they want that scanned specifically. So that's one of the things that we do. But we're very much interested in some clear communication and just being able to reach out both ways with anything that anybody needs. So scanning is one of those, providing exams.
Well, and maybe that's the next question is if I'm a faculty member, say I'm teaching chemistry, and I have a student who needs a test accommodations. Mm-hmm. How does that process work? Sure.
So when they receive the accommodation memo from the Office of Disability Services, we do as well. And then if it's a professor who has not been in our system before, we enroll them in our system and get them set up, and then we email them off of that accommodation memo with instructions for how to log into Register Blast and submit their exam. And I've got like a whole documented with screenshots of every step of the way. And if they have any issues, they should just always feel free to give us a call. I've walked many professors through little troubleshooting things over the phone. I've gone to professors' offices and helped them get set up with it. A little maybe spoiler alert is we're trying really hard to figure out Register Blast integration into D2L, which will make the whole process easier for both professors and students because they'll just be able to click right from their class into the Register Blast system, and everything will kind of start auto-populating for them. But yes, we just have a series of questions that we ask them so that our goal is always to provide the exam for the student according to the faculty's directives, and just establish the highest level of exam integrity so that everyone can feel good about the situation. And we are even able to, and I think professors like this a little bit, we are able to, for paper exams, scan and attach it to the student's appointment in the professor's portal. So they can go right into their portal, see when their student checked in, checked out, and then they can download the exam right.
Well, and that was going to be my next question. Student comes in, takes the exam, it's done. Mm-hmm. How does that get communicated back to the professor?
Sure. So I just actually created not too long ago, about a month ago maybe, a communication trigger that when if it's a paper exam, when the exam file is uploaded, the professor gets an email that says exam materials have been added to this student. So there's different things that we can communicate just right through Register Blast to alert them if a student didn't show up for an exam, if we need them to submit the paper exam. They've indicated in the form that it's a paper exam, but they haven't uploaded it yet, and we've got students coming in. We can do just different kinds of communications right through there, and then
sounds like it's all about the communication.
Really all about the communication for everybody.
Right. So we're kind of nearing the end of our time, so I wanted to wrap up really maybe with two questions. One, I realize we have not told anyone where the testing center is located yet, and so I think it's important to know where the red brick building is. And so maybe I'll let you all just talk about, if I need to get a hold of you all, probably where it is, but also along the communication lines, how do I get a hold of you all?
Sure. So we're kind of in this little triangle between the dairy bar, the barn, and Agberg Hall, or Berg Ag Hall. So we sit in that little space where a standalone brick building kind of looks like a little square house or a big square house. And they can get to us on the website. If they do testing-center after the SD State, they can find us there. They can call us. We have a general email box that any of our staff can access to kind of help if there's questions.
Right. So the last question then, and maybe Val will let you take this first, is kind of the big takeaway. If there was one thing you wanted the students of SDSU to know about the testing center, what would that be?
We are here for them.
There you go.
We are here for them. We love to see them succeed, and so whatever we can do, we will do that. And yeah, student success, 100%.
I love that, and you knew that right away. I barely got the question out. You're like, here it is. Janell, is there anything you wanted to add before we wrap up?
I think that really says it all. The one thing that I don't think we've actually touched on at all, and I should probably put just a little plug in there, is that if any students have any prior learning credit, whether it's advanced placement, CLEP, DSST, IB, we handle credit or challenge by portfolio, challenge by exam, those kinds of things. So that's another major aspect of what we do for students on our campus.
That's a big piece to get in there at the end, right? Well, I do want to thank both of you for coming over and having this conversation. I learned a lot just getting a chance to talk to you all, and I hope that our audience learned about the different services and about the ways that your office supports their success as well. And I think that's really important. And so I want to thank both Val Smith and Janell Davis for coming over from the SDSU Testing Center to be a part of our podcast today. And I want to thank all of you who are able to join in and enjoy this episode of the State of Wellbeing podcast.
Thank you for listening to this episode of State of Wellbeing, a podcast from South Dakota State University. This podcast is brought to you by the Mental Wellbeing Team and SD State Health.